So next up, we have a panel discussion, and the moderator of the panel, welcoming in a new generation of conservative leaders, men and women we're proud of, that are serving us in Harrisburg and across the state. The moderator of the panel will be Joy Johnson. Joy is the Director of Communications for PMA, the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Is that a shout out for Joy or PMA or both? All right. One more time, let's hear it for Joy and PMA, right? Joy has been the spokesperson and one of the leaders of Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association for quite some time, leading an organization committed to the businesses that make and do things for us here in Pennsylvania and ship and share them across the nation and across the world. And if they had their way, there'd be even more businesses here in Pennsylvania making things, producing things, and shipping them across Pennsylvania and the nation and the world. Joy brings her own experience of leadership in marketing and business development, and more importantly, understanding what it takes to make Pennsylvania grow. She's a perfect moderator for this panel, the next generation, as we pass the torch to those leaders who will help make Pennsylvania the state it can be. Welcome to the stage, Joy Johnson.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this conversation about a new generation of conservatives. I'm Joy Johnson, Director of Communication for the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, and I'm excited to lead this conversation about how we can better engage younger voters and communicate conservative ideas in a way that resonates with them. We all know that politics is changing. The way that young voters consume media and look to the future is different than in generations before. And so we have to adapt the way that we're messaging to reach them where they're at and communicate all of these ideas in a way that will reach home with them. And so I'm excited to moderate this panel with this wonderful group of people that are making a difference right here in Pennsylvania as young leaders and rising conservatives. Electra Janis is the Washington County Commissioner and dedicated public servant with a strong commitment to fiscal responsibility and economic growth. Electra is leading the charge in connecting with young voters at a local level. She has worked to modernize county government, making it more efficient and accessible. Additionally, she has been a strong advocate for policies that promote job creation and an economic opportunity in her community. Please welcome Electra. Next, Senator Picozzi represents part of Philadelphia County and is a strong advocate for limited government and economic opportunity. He understands the importance of effective messaging in today's fast-paced political landscape. His campaign energized young conservatives like never before, building an army of young volunteers who knocked on more doors than any other campaign in this past election cycle. Absolutely. His ability to inspire and mobilize young voters proves that the next generation of conservative is ready to take action and shape our future. Welcome, Senator Picozzi. And last but not least, welcome Tom Kutz, representing part of Cumberland County, and he is one of the youngest members of the Pennsylvania House, and which helps him bring a fresh perspective on policymaking and grassroots engagement. He has been a vocal advocate for reducing government overreach and ensuring Pennsylvania remains a competitive place for both businesses and for workers. His ability to connect with young constituents through direct engagement, digital outreach, has helped bridge the gap between conservative principles and the next generation. Please welcome Representative Tom Kutz. Each of these impressive individuals has firsthand experience in reaching and mobilizing younger voters to win elections, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them today. So we'll dive right in. Electra, I'll begin with you. Younger voters today have different expectations from politicians and government. What do you think is the most important factor in earning their trust?
So I want to say that the first thing that comes to mind, and it's a word that all elected officials like to use, I think you guys will agree, is transparency. But in my opinion, more importantly, for our generation and those that are growing up right now, I think authenticity is extremely important. It's something I'm sure we'll reference multiple times on this panel, but with social media and the way that kids are on their phones these days, they're watching everything. You know, people want to see what you're doing, where you're going, who you're doing it with. They want to see, you know, I joke all the time with Senator Bartolotta, who's my senator, that if it's on Facebook, it didn't happen. That's her phrase. That's your proof is in the pudding. The people want to know what you're doing, but they want to know that what you're portraying is actually what you are doing and who you are. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to, you know, my assistant is actually younger than me, and I was proud to hire a young, eager girl out of college, and she tells me all the time, we're going to make a funny video about this. And part of me says, oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like that might not be super professional. And she's like, no, people will love it. And I've noticed in the videos, just silly videos that we make of real everyday experiences and things that we're doing in the office, people take to that. So I think being authentic, and then of course, in terms of policy and when you're working, just maintaining transparency and really not hiding anything and letting the voters know that you're working for them and letting them feel like they can call you and let you know what they want from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that segues perfectly into my next question for Representative Kutz, which is that many young voters are skeptical of traditional messaging, as Electra mentioned. How can conservatives adapt their messaging to resonate without compromising core principles?
So Joy, I think there's two things. Number one is we need more young messengers. So there's young people are only going to listen to so many messages from people that are established and have been around for a long time. People who are in their 20s, 30s, they want to hear from young conservatives. They want to hear from young people who say conservatism works for me and here's why it should work for other young people. I mean, we have the three of us up on this stage, each a different sphere of influence in the Commonwealth that we can go out and reach more people and say, hey, look, we're young, we're conservative. Here's why government overreach is a bad thing. Here's how it affects you. I think that brings me to the second point, which is we have to frame the message in a way that young people understand. Young people might not understand why stifling energy innovation and keeping us from energy independence affects their daily lives. And we say, no, look, this affects the cost that you're going to pay on your utility bills. It's going to affect the cost you have to build a home because of unnecessary stormwater regulations. It's going to affect the cost of gas that gets the truck to get the goods to this grocery store. And those prices have to be passed on to consumers. So when we get to frame the message in ways that young people understand, they will come to see that being conservative is not just a tagline. We don't just care about fiscal responsibility because it's good policy. We care about it because it's good for our communities, it's good for our families, and ultimately it's good for the long-term growth of our country, both economically and in terms of demographically, trying to get more young people involved in the process. And I think framing the message in ways that younger voters understand is a great way that we can take a step forward as a party and get more young people to realize that being conservative is the best thing for our country.
Yeah, absolutely. These aren't just like global ideas that are far away from them, but it affects them at their kitchen tables and for their futures as they want to move forward.
Right.
Right. So Senator Picozzi, as we're talking about this, I think it's important, first of all, to really define who we're talking about, because we know that's the first role in messaging is to determine the audience that you're looking for. So can you tell us, how do you define the new generation of conservatives and how they're different from past generations?
Just to level set from the beginning, I mean, young people, we're kind of cooked right now. We feel like we're never going to own a home. We're never going to do as well as our parents. That the economic mobility and opportunity that previous generations had, the American dream, is closed off to us. I get so many friends my age, I'm about to turn 30, they're living at home with their parents, not by choice, but because they can't get off on their feet. So we're looking for leadership that's going to say, we're going to build a better future for you. You're going to live in a world where you can actually get off on your feet, that you can get ahead in life, that you can, we're not asking for anything crazy. Safe neighborhoods, good schools, a wholesome community, ability to go on a vacation once a year, buy a couple of Eagles tickets or your Steelers tickets for some of these. That's what we want. Now, in terms of the audience, right, the young people. So my campaign, we had about 50 young people, 14 to 25, working on my campaign. We go out and we knock doors every day. That's how we hit the 70,000 doors. And a lot of these kids, they weren't saying, I'm a Burkean conservative, right? They weren't saying, I'm even a Republican. They were saying, hey, I like this guy. I like what he's talking about, what he's going around the neighborhood. I see him here at our school. I see him here at Pennypack Park. I love what you were saying, Electra, about authenticity and transparency. right? That's what resonates with people. They're not going to vote, young voters, they're not going to go on party. They're going to go on the person. Who is this person? What's their story? What are they trying to do? What's their message? What's their mission? People want to see a vision that they can buy into, something that inspires them, that galvanizes them to action. That's how you build a youth movement, frankly. That's what we're able to do in Philadelphia, and I believe you can do it just about anywhere.
Well, and you mentioned kind of a few of the issues that you saw, and I wanted to ask Electra as well. From your grassroots interactions with young voters, what do you see as the top policy issues that they're concerned about?
I think with my position, it's a little bit different than the two in the state legislature here because I don't legislate. I administer the county and make sure that, the county's run the way that it should be. So for a lot of my voters, their concerns, it wasn't guns and abortion and those types of things. People did ask my views on those types of things, but on a county level, for my standpoint, it's economic development, that those were the big things that were really driving the voters. People want to hear jobs that you're going to bring to the county, businesses. We actually, my fellow commissioner and I have worked very hard, and we just got, in Washington County, Pennsylvania, a Costco, which is big news for us. We don't have one in the county. Our closest one is in Robinson in Allegheny County. So people were very excited about that. That's going to bring 300 jobs. And, it just brings opportunity and makes you want to live there and stay there. But I would definitely say when I was knocking on doors, the biggest issues people had in the county were concerns with the economy. So jobs and, oil and gas, drained resources is a huge component in Washington County. The Marcellus Shale started there. They had the Wren's Well 20th anniversary recently. So all of that stuff is extremely important to us in Washington County. But I just wanted to kind of make that clear because what I do versus what they do is a little bit different, the legislating versus administering, but all very important for the economy.
Absolutely. And switching gears a little bit from who we're communicating to how we're communicating, Representative Kutz, the left has dominated cultural institutions like Hollywood, academia, and social media. What strategies can conservatives employ to help to make an impact in those areas?
Well, I don't know about you, Joy, but I think the left can have Hollywood. That's nothing that interests me. But look, talk about our college campuses. I think we saw in this last election, go woke, go broke. And that's the lesson that everyone should take away. You have legislators in Harrisburg and people on college campuses rallying in support of terrorist organizations who are committing the most heinous human rights violations we've seen in a generation, and they're celebrating them on college campuses. We have people who want biological men to play in women's sports, and they think that that's normal, and they think that's what people want to hear. And I think what we saw in 2024 was a radical rejection of the radical left and a rejection of everything that the left stands for with those institutions. Being conservative isn't about standing for an institution of higher education or Hollywood. Being conservative is about standing for your family. It's about standing for your family values, and it's about standing for a culture that's different than that the elites are going to preach to us in Ivy League institutions. I don't know about you, but if you've seen the way our Republican Party looks today, it's not full of Hollywood elites and intellectual elites. It's full of hardworking people who take a shower before or after they go to work and not before. It's full of people who want to go work hard and make a living and want the government to take a little bit less out of their paycheck. So for me, I think the institutions we should be looking at is we should be looking at tradespeople. We should be looking at nurses who are coming home after a long day. We should be looking to expand our party for people who have worked an honest job and an honest wage and said, look, we want something honest from you. You have to balance your checkbook at home. We're going to do the same as government. And I think what gets lost so much is we're looking at Democrats in Harrisburg who have a spending problem and people at home who are trying to make ends meet because of inflationary policies of the left are the ones struggling and looking at government saying perhaps they should take a step back too. There's plenty of ways that we can grow our message and grow our party, and I think that's chief among them.
Very well said. Yeah, absolutely. So Senator Picozzi, circling back to what both you and Electra highlighted, that many young voters are passionate about issues like the economy and personal freedom and technological innovations as well. How can conservatives frame their policies in a way that speaks directly to those issues?
Well, you have to bring it right to the people. We talked about digital media. We talked about showing, not telling. You have to actually go in the community and talk about what this could look like, what the future could be. You actually have to have an affirmative message. It can't just be playing defense all the time. We need to have an affirmative vision of what the future is going to look like right here in your neighborhood, right here in your block. You have to talk about the world that you want to see and paint a picture of what the future can look like. That's what inspires people. That's what galvanizes people. That's what gets people not just to vote for you, but to work for you. When we had people come out, they said, I had a guy, this stuck with me, this is last weekend, he says, you're the first candidate I ever canvassed for since Bobby Kennedy. I couldn't even believe that. Like, when you have a real message and a real affirmative vision, that's what I think drives people out. In terms of the future, I mean, our generation is going to be tasked with dealing with new challenges, technological advances, things that previous generations hadn't had to think through, like artificial intelligence, like radical changes in the economy with automation. I think there's a real incumbency upon young leaders to step up and actually steer that conversation, because the precedents that we set today could last for hundreds of years. So I think we need some more forward-looking leadership.
And as Electra, as we're talking about, yeah, absolutely. As we're talking about voters and campaigns, we know that it's not just the people that show up at the polls, but it's also engagement in campaigns as well that we really need to be tapping these younger voters in. So from your experience, how do you encourage young voters not just to support conservative ideas, but to actively participate in politics?
I would say, you can start at your local level. That's arguably, and no disrespect, gentlemen, but the local level is where it all happens, right? It's your school board voters, your supervisors. That's one of the things we're talking about right now with an upcoming election. It's the lowest voter turnout cycle right now, and that's just really sad because when COVID happened, you had people who were upset with their school boards wearing masks and things like that. Those are the people we have elected. So you need to show up and go to the polls and get involved. And, obviously, I think these guys can agree with me. When you're campaigning at such a young age, trying to convince the people that you're the person that should be in there, you're the right choice, it's really difficult to go against age. People assume age means no experience. What are you going to do for me? How are you going to handle this? So you're fighting up against a lot there. And that's something that, getting involved, if you're afraid to get involved, how are you going to make it work? But if you have complaints about the school board or your county or whatever it is, how are we going to make that change if we don't get involved? You have to start somewhere. So I would say to any young individual that's considering anything in politics, running for something, get involved on a committee, contact your local party, contact your local state rep, anybody, and no one is going to tell you no to volunteering on a campaign, for starters, right? I mean, if somebody calls and says they want to help your campaign, I think, young kids, we're ready to help them. The proof is in the pudding. I'm grateful to be sitting on this stage here with these two gentlemen because we all worked very hard to get here. It's not easy. It's not going to come overnight. A lot of times young people get that bad rep for being lazy and you do have to work for it, but it is possible, and getting involved is definitely worth it, and it's the only way that you're going to see a change.
Yeah, wonderfully said, yeah. And building on that, there's often a perception, kind of like you were implying, that politics in general, and sometimes, unfortunately, the Republican Party is not as welcoming to young people. So Representative Kutz, how can we change that narrative and create a more inviting movement that really encourages young people to feel like they have a buy-in and a voice in our movement?
I think it's meeting people where they're at, whether it's on social media, whether it's at their doorstep. We have to be willing to go engage people and maybe look at traditional means of communication that may not be as effective. I can't convey to a voter in a 30-second TV ad why they should vote for me and why they agree on things necessarily, when what's going to be more effective is by me going and knocking on their door saying, hey, get involved. And when they see young families, last night I went to a local school showcase where it was kids who just pulled together research projects. And I just walked around and I met some of these kids at the Capitol. You have to go out into the community and be willing to go. I think the number of doors that have been knocked on this stage probably, and out in the audience in particular as well, because I know how many people out here are so active. That is so vitally important. And I think if we want to grow our party, we have to grow our message and grow the number of messengers you have. So it means not being afraid to stand up and tell people you're conservative. So for me, it's whether it's taking a video and showing people, hey, this is what we're about, It's that authenticity that Electra and Joe have talked about already, but it's having them put trust in the person and the message and less trust in the institution. I mean, I have zero faith in the United States Congress or the Pennsylvania General Assembly, but if you know that you have hardworking, principled people, you can be pragmatic, but you're convicted and principled and not willing to waver on those things, and people at home know that when they're sending you to Harrisburg or to Washington, they're sending someone there to fight for you. They're not sending you to go have a good time. They know that their people are going there to fight for them, just as these people are fighting for their families at home. So when we look at our commitment to public service, our commitment is just to that we need to be accountable, transparent, accessible to constituents. The best way to have accessibility is by going and meeting people where they're at, because it's a lot harder for someone not to vote for you if they can ask you about questions face to face. Say, here are the 3 issues I have, and I can explain them all. They're like, I don't have a reason not to vote for it anyway. That's how we grow our party. It's how we grow our message. It's how we deliver conservative dominance in our political ecosystems for generations to come.
Very well said. So we do know that in this generation, students and young people are spending more time on their phone than really any generation in history, in human history. And so, Senator Picozzi, since social media is dominating the landscape in many ways, beyond just reaching voters, how can candidates and campaigns use these tools to connect and recruit staff and voters?
Well, that's where we got so many of our volunteers, through social media. And part of what we did, and one of my core principles is that government, politics, it should be fun. It should be something that's engaging, that's exciting. It shouldn't just be people who are angry and yelling at each other. It should be people who are upbeat, who believe in something. This whole mythos that young people are lazy, it's a total lie. The reality is that young people want to be inspired. They want a mission, and they have a mission. They will work their tails off like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I couldn't keep, thank you. Thank you. And my message, the core of it was, nobody's coming to save us here in Northeast Philly. If we want the neighborhood to be safe, if we want the streets to be clean, if we want our schools to be better, our parks to be cleaned up, then we're going to have to do it. I was recruiting kids at their doors, some of my strongest volunteers. But we also met them where they're at, right? We were running, all kinds of ads targeted directly to them. You had a brain rot ad to get involved. I don't know if you know what that is, but you can look it up. We would we would go to the schools. We would talk to the kids, and they would tell their friends. And by building a fun, inviting environment too, right, where we're constantly showing that this is a fun thing to be engaged in, then people kind of spread by word of mouth. In fact, in our polls, the number 1 way people heard about my campaign was word of mouth. Also, another principle we had was that public service and community service is the same thing. So not only would we knock doors, we would pick up trash. We would clean up the neighborhood. We would do different charity events. Because I wanted the kids to understand that when you're going out and knocking a door, and when you're cleaning up bags of trash in the neighborhood, it's the same thing. You're fighting to make the community better. And that galvanized them, and we made it fun for them every single day. I'm excited to just keep going and build on what we built last year. So thank you.
That's a wonderful perspective. And I think you highlight a good point of the misconception that young people are lazy or don't want to be involved. And I want to pose this to all 3 of you. Are there other misconceptions that you think that conservatives carry about younger voters? And do those misconceptions get in the way of us reaching them in the best way possible?
I think the biggest misconception is young people are not conservative. And that has been a message for decades, because the left has used their positions in powerful institutions to go after young people and basically pull them into their party. I mean, how many people, I'm in Cumberland County here, how many people are registered to vote at Dickinson College that don't live here and won't live here? And that's something else we got to look at with voter rolls as well, and election integrity is a huge part of that. But I think looking at the change that we've seen in young voters now, people want the authenticity that conservatives have brought. They want that message. They don't want robotic Kamala Harris preaching to them about San Francisco values. They want real people who know exactly what it means to sign the bottom of a check, to go to work for a hard day. I mean, these are what young people care about. They're not thinking about the woke things that have so often plagued our country and our society. I think that's one of the biggest ways that if we just realize, look, young people are more conservative than we think, let's go send them an invitation to get involved. Let's get them to volunteer to work a poll. Let's get them to join a college Republicans chapter. How many people at college campuses, because they're afraid to speak freely, haven't started those chapters to get people involved and to go out and register voters? So I think just by going to young people and start talking about politics, I think that's going to go a long way.
Electra, do you have any thoughts about those misconceptions?
I agree completely with what you said. I definitely, you spoke to me when you said voter rolls and election integrity, because that's under our jurisdiction. We run the elections office, and you would be surprised at the, I don't want to say corruption, but I'm going to say corruption, that there is. How many people are registered that should not be registered? We cleaned up thousands in Washington County alone. I can't even imagine across the rest of the state. And I know everybody in here is familiar with all of that and does a lot of hard work, but it's all about the messaging too. I agree with what you said about how the left, the messaging of younger individuals are always liberal, always woke. That's not always the case, but the left is so good at that messaging. They present that to the people, and that's what everybody believes. But that's not the case. And similar to what you said, the young individuals are passionate and they want to see a change. You know, young people are voting with their wallets now. That's what's important. They want a future. Like he said, we're scared. We can't buy houses. We're not going to be able to afford this future. That, you know, why have a kid? Why raise a kid in this world? Those are the thoughts that are going through young people's heads right now. So I think there's enough people out there that are scared and angry that we can make that change.
Very excellent. All right, well, we are coming down to the end of our time. We have time for one more question that I'll pose to all of you as well. Looking ahead to the future, what gives you the most optimism and hope as you look to the conservative movement in the future? Representative Kutz, would you like to?
Sure. I think what makes me the most optimistic is just looking at people who are coming out and unapologetically unafraid to come out and challenge the status quo. We have, I think, more young people running for office who want to get involved, more young families who are willing to come out here and say, I'm fighting for my kid, right? I think let me give you a perfect example. We had a state championship team, girls field hockey team, come visit the Capitol. And one of my colleagues, Representative Klein, was the prime sponsor of the Women in Sports bill. And every one of them thanked her for protecting their sports, for protecting it, because they know that the woke messaging of the radical left just doesn't compute with their everyday lives. I think it gives me a lot of hope to see that for so long we were afraid to upset the apple cart. We thought that when the left said something, we were afraid to be labeled in a certain way. Now, don't be afraid to be labeled as conservative. Don't be afraid to be labeled as someone with strong family values. Don't be afraid to be someone who's labeled as someone who cares about the principles our nation was founded upon. This is the most important thing that we could ask for from our future generations, and it counts on each and every one of us to be willing to go out and lead and not just lay down because the left says so. We have to stand up and we have to fight for the conservative principles that we know are important, and it's encouraging to me to see so many more young legislators getting involved, young people stepping up, not just in elected office, but in leadership roles in the private sector, to volunteer, to bring a conservative perspective to youth sports and coaching, and to be mentors and elders at their church. I mean, these are the things that are most important to our conservative values, and it gets me really excited to see our next generation.
Wonderful. Well, we're almost out of time, yes. But can I, Senator Picozzi, go?
Sure, I'll be brief because we're running out. One thing that excites me the most about the right now is there's so much new ideas. There's new energy. You know, the party and the movement that is able to stake a claim on the future that we talked about, being able to own a home, being able to live that American dream, is the party that's going to see success. What I'm excited about our party is we're not this dogmatic, if you don't believe this or that, get out of here. We're this party that says, okay, well, we'll hear you out. We're genuinely welcoming and inviting. And it's not just young people. It's recent immigrants. It's people from all sorts of different backgrounds that never thought about voting Republican for decades. They're starting to take a look at us. So the stigma, that whole thing we talked about, it's starting to fade away. People are just looking for answers. They're looking for a vision. And if we can be the movement that provides that, we will see electoral success in this state and across the country.
And Electra, final thoughts from you.
The thing that excites me the most about the future of the Conservatives is the passion that I see. On my campaign, and then especially after I won, I had so many young individuals reach out to me and say how proud of me they were that I was able to pull this off. And it was a 6-way primary. It was a really tough general election. The left sent out a mailer that said I wasn't old enough to rent a car a year ago, so they shouldn't elect me. Surprise, right? But I think that that passion got people excited. And, I have a lot of friends that have young children, and my one friend says to me all the time, my daughters are watching you. And that's the type of thing that we have to keep to, is know that the youth is the future. They are watching, and there's a lot of excitement there, and it's going to be a good future if we can make it that way.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us for this very important discussion, and thank you to all of our panelists. Please join with me in thanking them.